Well, now, as promised, I told you that I would tell you and inform you how much water was actually in the earth.
This creationist's promises are completely and utterly meaningless. Once again, let me demonstrate how this is. Now we're revisiting the fifth creationist in this series for our 7th episode. For those of you who have yet to hear of him, his username is NephilimFree. He is guilty of these infractions in addition to those already pointed out previously. To summarize the main points, this creationist has misidentified his critics, quote mined me, and ignored key points of information, including the fact that he just doesn't follow up properly on the references that his critics have provided, in particular the references that the extant dodos provided on their initial response to John Pendleton's conference, and the references that I provided when I made my response to this creationist's ridiculous Educating the Dodo series. He also ignores refutations made by other sane people when they make them, as will become abundantly clear, and he continuously quotes his critics out of context, as will be demonstrated. The information refuting his claims in this video is available in my original response, where I provided references which the creationist ignored as if I'd never provided them. Two conclusions can be drawn from these facts. Either the creationist did not bother to fully check the information and is basically guilty of being a lazy researcher, or more insidiously, he is well aware of the existence of the evidence that refutes his claims and is instead refusing to acknowledge its existence, either because he can't stand to face it and is shutting it out, or because he really is dishonest enough that he won't let his viewers know about it. As likely as any other scenario is, this one's more likely because of the fundamentalist belief that Jesus is Lord demands that its followers lie to protect this belief. The fact that he is also addressing me as if I am Thunderfoot is due to one of two possible scenarios. Either he doesn't have a clue and thinks that Thunderfoot and myself are one and the same person, or he is being a subscriber whore and even more dishonest by using Thunderfoot's name to try and collect more subscribers and view counts from people who are searching for Thunderfoot. Neither scenario is acceptable practice and further highlights the need to point out what this individual is up to.
As you can clearly see, I am not Thunderfoot. However, this guy is.
Hey there. I just thought I would appear to explain why I never appear in my videos.
I will not bother with the other videos in this series, as all he has done in all of them is engage in more of the same behaviour that I will highlight here. This will be my only response to this creationist, as he is definitely not worth any more of my precious time, and anything I need to say has already been stated in previous videos addressing the absurd arguments made by this crazy creationist. And now on to the video itself.
Because you say,
there is insufficient water underground to create your mythical flood.
And I stand by that statement. I have already made mention of the behaviour engaged in by this creationist, his ignorance, and his quote mining. Let's move on.
and because you say,
For once the creationist is right, there is no natural process that could create the amount of water in such a short amount of time that would be required to flood Mount Everest. But then of course, there isn't that much water, and the flood didn't happen.
I stand by this statement too, again backed up by evidence. But I'll come back to this. I'm sure that what the creationist is about to say will generate a great amount of laughter among the sane community on YouTube.
and because you say,
United States Geological Survey and several scientific journals including Nature all carry the requisite information on water storage in underground sources, including that which is stored in the mantle.
Did anyone else notice the superscript numbers on my videos in blue typeface? Those of you who are sane probably recognize them as reference numbers. In my original Educating NephilimFree series, these reference numbers corresponded to reference materials listed in the sidebar of the corresponding video. Reference material that is easy to access and investigate. The creationist relied on people's unwillingness to do so.
well, today you'll get a lesson in geology.
Not from this creationist, I won't.
You're going to learn that there is enough water in the earth under the conditions that the earth was in at the time of the flood to flood the earth again.
Unfortunately for the creationist, his information is wrong. We will see this as I address some of his arguments. No doubt, however, the creationist will take this opportunity, as he has done every time in the past, to take me out of context.
At the time of the flood, the ocean floors were much higher than they are today.
First, the creationist has provided no evidence, as usual. Second, this claim, also proposed by Henry Morris and John C. Whitcomb in 1961, originated before the theory of plate tectonics existed as an explanation for mountain building. But this is not the first time that the creationist in this video has attacked plate tectonics in favour of his religious beliefs. Number 3. The catastrophic formation of mountains and the subsequent return of the sea into its oceanic basin would have released tremendous amounts of heat and kinetic energy, enough to boil the oceans and metamorphose the minerals in the mountains. No trace of such a catastrophe exists. And number 4. Formation of mountains during the flood does not explain the fact that different mountains are different ages. The Appalachians are much older than the Rockies, for example, as one can immediately see just from how the two ranges are eroded differently. It's amazingly easy to see this once you decide to open your eyes to the facts, but creationists are too stubborn and closed-minded to do this, as is demonstrated here and later in the video.
There was much more water in the earth than there is.
The creationist makes this assertion like every other assertion he has ever made, without providing any evidence. And I will state it again here, as I did in my original series, that the United States Geological Survey and several scientific journals, including Nature, carry the requisite knowledge of water sources on this planet, including that which is locked away in a mantle. Despite the creationists' initial claim in the Educating the Dodo series, none of this is secret or hidden information. All of it is available to the public, and when it is properly examined, it refutes the creationists' claims that there is enough water to cause a global flood, especially when you take into account what I mentioned before about plate tectonics, kinetic energy, and heat release.
There were no mountain ranges on the earth, perhaps rolling hills, and that's all.
This claim is also absent of evidence. I stated the problems with this assumption of the creationists earlier in the video. I will not repeat it again here.
You're going to learn just how much water is really still in the earth and where it came from. What you see here is a seismographic image made of the interior of the earth.
Does this creationist think that neither I nor Thunderfoot have ever watched any of his previous material? This moron actually thinks that I haven't seen this argument before. Let's see what he's going to say now, shall we?
They found that the plates of the earth on which the continents rest are sitting on water.
That's ridiculous. It's completely asinine. Water has a lower density per unit volume than rock. Obviously, rocks do not float on water. So unless the crust was completely sealed off, the water would have been forced to the surface long before Adam was supposedly made from dirt.
Not magma.
This is yet another outright lie. The creationist is one of the worst bullshit artists I have ever come across. According to this creationist, volcanoes don't erupt with magma, they don't eject lava flows. No, apparently they eject water. You see, the creationist has forgotten one very important fact. Volcanoes draw their molten material from the mantle. Volcanoes eject magma. Ergo, the mantle is composed of magma.
The one in the bottom right displays the resolution with which they can see the interior of the earth using this seismographic technology.
Actually, the one displayed on the creationists' video is dismal in comparison to what is available to real scientists. They can produce satellite imagery at exapixel resolutions once the individual scanned areas are stitched together, so I hardly think that a kilopixel image like that shown here even covers 1 square kilometer of the mantle.
The one on the left is a slice through the earth.
The creationist is famous for this, speaking absolute nonsense. He makes a 10-minute video with an argument that could have been stated in less than 30 seconds, and he still gets it wrong. Let's get to the point, shall we?
Now pay attention to this.
I prefer to pay attention to real scientists who actually know what the hell they're talking about.
You see this area I circled? That's where God split the earth open to create the flood.
And the scientific evidence for this stupendous claim is... Oh, that's right, there isn't any.
These areas of red and yellow that you see are massive quantities of water inside the earth, trapped inside stone.
Theta Omega has already addressed all of the creationists' bullshit contained in this video. I refer you to his refutation. Suffice to say, however, that the massive quantities of water in the mantle make up no more than 0.2% of the volume of the magmatic rock within the planet's mantle. That's 1 part in 500. The Creationist even goes as far as to admit this in a quote mine slide he uses later on in the video from a Professor Weissatian.
Water-saturated stone. The red areas are highly saturated with water, very dense.
Myself and Theta Omega have been over this before. Frankly, this is getting tedious.